I can't believe it. They let someone like that walk in. A lady's voice cut through the air, not loud enough to be overtly rude, but just enough for everyone to hear, especially the man who had just pushed the door open. Maison de Lumière, the kind of place where crystal chandeliers glisten over couture gowns, and every sip of wine costs more than $800, suddenly fell silent. The man wasn't dressed for this world. He wore a rain-soaked tattered coat and worn-out military boots that squished with each step. He didn't ask for a seat, didn't look around, just lowered his head and muttered hoarsely, "Could I have a cup of hot water? And maybe any scraps you're tossing out?" No one moved. The manager looked away. A young waiter stifled a laugh behind the bar. But in the shadowed corner of the room, where no light reached, a girl, with her hair neatly tied, stood still. Her name was Ariel, the regular evening shift waitress, never once addressed by name by a customer, never once complimented. And it was Ariel who broke the paralyzing silence. She didn't ask the head chef. She didn't check the menu. She simply turned, stepped into the kitchen, and selected the best of what remained that night, a warm serving of black mushroom risotto, a silver pot of brewed coffee, and a freshly folded clean towel. She placed the tray gently in front of the man. No explanation, just a warm, steady gaze. No one should be hungry. Not tonight. Not here. Crash. The sound exploded like a firecracker in the kitchen. A plate shattered on the floor. Then came a shrill voice sharper than the classical music still playing in the background. "You just served trash to a guest. You're fired. Get out of my kitchen now." Victor Langford, the arrogant head chef once praised in Forbes, stood there with eyes as sharp as blades. No one said a word. No one protested. The entire restaurant was gripped in a chilling silence, not because Ariel was wrong, but because everyone was too afraid to side with what was right. And from that throne plate, an empire once thought untouchable began to crack. No one stopped her, not a single sympathetic glance. Ariel stepped out of Maison de Lumière as if she had never existed. She removed her apron and folded it neatly, not out of fear, but because she had been taught leaving in silence is sometimes the last way to hold on to dignity. In the rain, she paused on the steps. Her hands trembled not from the cold, but because the old man, just before she turned away, had quietly slipped something into her hand. An old military dog tag, the name faded edges, worn thin, but still carrying the weight of history when held. She clenched it tightly, as if it were the last thing keeping her upright. Back in her damp fourth-floor rented room, no elevator, no heater. She quietly changed clothes and hung up the towel she'd given the man earlier. On the wall across from her bed hung a faded black-and-white photo, her late grandfather in uniform, gently smiling as he held her as a child. That night, like every night after her exhausting shifts, she sat by the small window and whispered to herself, "We're okay, Jules, even if the world turns its back." Jules was her grandfather's name. He was the one who taught her, honor doesn't need applause. It doesn't need the spotlight. It lives in the smallest things we do, like sweeping the porch clean, even when no one's coming. And on that rainy night, in a tiny room, lit by no more than her own shadow, Ariel understood the world might ignore her, but she would not ignore herself. In just one night, the video of Ariel being fired spread across social media like wildfire. A diner had recorded it not out of sympathy, but because they thought it was a viral drama moment. And it was. Millions of views, thousands of shares. But mixed with the outrage was something colder, skeptical cutting. Comments like, "Knives rules are rules. She brought it on herself. Probably got caught stealing before, that's why they fired her so fast. Clearly a performance. She's acting harder than the guests." She said nothing, didn't defend herself, but the world spoke for her in the cruelest way. A week passed. Ariel sent job applications to 14 restaurants. 6 never responded. 4 rejected her the moment they saw her name. 3 agreed to interviews, then wordlessly returned her resume the instant she walked through the door. 1 restaurant didn't even bother speaking. The manager simply tapped on his phone and held the screen up to her face. "We don't hire people with bad press." The city seemed to swallow her whole, as if kindness were a stain no one wanted to touch. Ariel wandered through gusty streets, clutching her damp folder of resumes, stomach-empty shoes soaked, and with only one thing left in her pocket, the old dog tag, its inscription nearly unreadable, Turner Eli J. A piece of cold metal, yet somehow the only thing left that made her feel warm. That morning, Madison Avenue, normally calm and refined, was thrown into chaos. Police set up barricades. Crowds gathered in droves. Over 10 sleek black SUVs pulled up one after another in front of the National Veterans Hall. The media swarmed the scene, cameras trained in the same direction as a man stepped out of the first vehicle. He wore a full, ceremonial military uniform, chest adorned with medals, walking with a posture as rigid as a steel beam, each step striking the pavement with palpable authority. But when he took the microphone, his voice didn't echo like that of a commanding officer. It trembled like a son speaking for his father. "I am Colonel Matthew Turner, commanding officer of the 75th Airborne Brigade, and the man you all called a beggar is my father, Eli Jeremiah Turner, former Special Forces Sergeant, the man who carried me out of a bombing raid in Fallujah in 2007. The space fell dead silent. Matthew reached into his breast pocket and held up a small object before the rows of flashing cameras. The Silver Star is one of the military's highest honors for valor. He carried me on his back, wounded, bleeding, for 3 miles through an active combat zone. He refused treatment until every man in his unit was evacuated. My father is a silent hero. His eyes burned, not with rage, but with emotion, threatening to break his voice. And among the millions in this city, the only one who still saw him was a nameless waitress who got fired for daring to treat my father like a human being. The auditorium shattered into a wave of stunned silence. No one breathed. No one looked away from the man holding a dog tag identical to the one Ariel still carried. You all forgot him, but she didn't. And today it is she who reminds me that honor still exists. Ariel had no idea what was waiting for her beyond that door. All she had received was a brief message from a veterans organization. "We would like to meet you. Please come to Madison Avenue at 10 a.m. She barely had enough money for the cab, but she went anyway. Her hair was neatly tied back, her old shirt freshly ironed, and her worn-out shoes scrubbed clean. When the car stopped at the head of the street, the driver, an elderly man, suddenly stepped out and opened the door for her as if she were someone of great importance. Ariel blinked in confusion until she stepped out and looked up. The entire street was silent. 2 rows of uniformed soldiers stood from one end of the block to the other, over 200 men and women. Each of them had faced war, stared down death, and survived things the world would never truly comprehend. And the moment Ariel's foot touched the sidewalk, every single one of them raised their hand in salute. No words were spoken. No flowers, no banners, no music. Only reverence, silent, yet echoing like thunder. Ariel froze in place. Her eyes widened. Her hands trembled, and then she instinctively reached for the pocket where the dog tag had remained for days. She gripped it tightly, as if trying to pour every emotion exploding in her chest into that tiny piece of cold steel. And then her tears fell. not from humiliation, not from being honored, but because for the first time in her life, the kindness she had always given freely without ever asking for anything in return was finally seen, finally thanked, and finally honored in the most sacred way with the respect of those who understood the true weight of honor. The next morning, major headlines dominated the front pages. Maison de Lumière fires Waitress for helping war, hero silver star, and a shattered plate. Which honor matters more? Culinary empire toppled by a waitress. No one remembered sponsors pulled out instantly. Waves of reservation cancellations crashed in. Those who once bragged about booking tables 6 months in advance now loudly declared their boycott. Victor Langford, the famed chef, once hailed as a visionary of modern cuisine, was swiftly removed from the International Culinary Association. Restaurants that once employed him erased his name from their history. The Culinary Institute, where he taught quietly, took down his portrait from their wall of honor. No one stood up for him, just as he had refused to stand up for another human being. Maison de Lumière officially shut down after 12 years in operation. Its doors, once open only to the elite, were now locked by the judgment of the public. And Ariel. She didn't post a status. She didn't give interviews. She didn't sign media contracts or accept talk show invitations. Instead, she quietly took a new job at Hope Haven Community Kitchen, a place that serves free meals to veterans, the homeless, and those forgotten by society. She worked the same way she always had, in the kitchen, carrying trays, asking each person the same gentle question: would you like something warm to eat today? There, no one had to dress up to be welcomed. No one had to prove they were worthy of a meal, because Ariel understood kindness is not a privilege to be granted by the powerful. It is a human right to be seen, to be respected, and to be treated as a person. That afternoon, the sky draped over the city like a soft gray cloth after a passing storm. In the small kitchen of the community dining hall, Ariel was scrubbing the last pot when she heard a knock at the door, gentle and rhythmic, more like someone asking for permission than demanding entry. She opened it, and there stood a boy, about 7 years old, small, thin, wrapped in a worn-out hoodie, clutching a brown paper box tied with a red ribbon. Neither of them spoke for a few seconds. The boy looked up at her, eyes clear but full of quiet conviction, the kind of gaze adults often overlook, just because it comes from a child not wearing new shoes or backed by wealthy parents. "I saw you online," he murmured. "My grandpa's a soldier. He says, people who live kindly should be remembered. So, this is my savings and cookies my mom taught me to make. You can use them to help others." Ariel didn't respond right away. She knelt down, looking at him as if the whole world had fallen silent to make space for this moment. She wrapped her arms around him gently, but tightly, as if embracing every year of being dismissed, every stormy night, with no shelter, every ache of standing alone for what was right when no one stood with her. No tears, no cameras, just a real hug between two strangers who somehow understood each other through a language that transcends all barriers: kindness. That night, Ariel quietly opened the wooden keepsake box on her shelf, a neatly folded American flag with silver trim, gifted by a veterans organization. The Silver Star was personally returned to her by Colonel Matthew Turner on behalf of all those who were ever forgotten. And the old silver dog tag, Turner, ELIJ. She added one more thing: the small cookie wrapped in a red ribbon and the dollar bill folded neatly by the boy. Then she closed the box, not locking it, because she knew what's given from the heart doesn't need to be locked away. It only needs to be remembered. This isn't just the story of Ariel the waitress, who turned a soggy dog tag into a viral sensation, or a warm plate of risotto that sent a fancy restaurant's ego crashing harder than a dropped soufflé. It's not even about the 200 soldiers who saluted her like she'd just won the Kindness Olympics, or the Silver Star that proved a beggar was a hero in disguise. No, folks, this is a story about the wild, wonderful, and slightly ridiculous power of choosing to do the right thing, even when the world's screaming, "Are you nuts?" Ariel could have played it safe. She could have nodded along when the head chef threw his tantrum, kept her head down, and saved her job. But nope, she went full-on rebel with a tray, serving up compassion like it was the special of the day. And let's be honest, in a place where a glass of water probably costs more than your Netflix subscription, that's the kind of bold move that deserves its own theme song. She didn't do it for the gram, the clout, or a pat on the back. She did it because somewhere deep down, she knew kindness isn't just a nice to have. It's the secret sauce that makes life worth living. Think about it. One small act, handing a hungry man a meal, snowballed into a citywide uproar. It brought a snobby chef's empire to its knees faster than you can say overcooked steak. It got a 7-year-old boy to part with his cookie fund, which, let's be real, is like convincing a dragon to share its gold. And it reminded a whole bunch of soldiers that honor isn't just about medals, it's about not forgetting the guy who carried you through a war zone even when he's wearing a soggy coat. This story is a giant glittery neon sign that says, you've got a choice. You can be the person who laughs behind the bar, scrolls past someone's struggle, or shrugs when the world is unfair. Or you can be the Ariel, someone who sees a need, grabs a towel, and says, "Not on my watch." It's about choosing to sweep the porch clean, as her grandpa Jules would say, even when no one's coming over. It's about betting on kindness when everyone else is betting on cynicism, and trust us, kindness pays out way better than a slot machine. And the best part, Ariel's choice didn't just change her life. It changed a veteran's legacy, a boy's worldview, and maybe even the way a few of us think about that grumpy stranger in line at the coffee shop. It's proof that one tiny spark of goodness can light up a whole city like a firework that accidentally sets off the whole show. So the next time you're tempted to stay quiet, to look away, or to let someone else deal with it, remember Ariel. She didn't have power money or a viral TikTok account, but she had heart, and that turned out to be the most powerful thing of all. Dear friend, well, you've just survived the emotional roller coaster of Ariel's story, bet. Your heart's doing somersaults, huh? From a waitress serving up kindness with a side of risotto to toppling a snooty chef's empire faster than you can say overpriced wine. Ariel's tale is the kind of epic that deserves its own blockbuster movie. Picture it. Kindness. The plate that shook the world, starring a dog tag and a 7-year-old with a cookie budget. Ariel didn't just give a meal to a forgotten hero. She basically drop-kicked the status quo with a warm towel and a smile. No cape, no spotlight, just pure, unfiltered decency. And let's be real, in a world where people fight over the last parking spot that's practically superhero-level stuff, she didn't post a sassy clapback online or start a Victor Langford is a jerk fan club. Nope, she just kept on being her kind self, proving that karma's got a better aim than a Michelin-starred chef throwing a tantrum. This story's for you, the unsung hero who's held the door open, for a stranger tipped extra even when your wallet was screaming, or done the right thing when everyone else was too busy scrolling their phones. Ariel's journey reminds us that you don't need a fancy title or a Chardonnay budget to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is a single act of kindness to turn a cold restaurant into a warm memory, or to inspire a kid to hand over his cookie cash like it's the key to world peace. So, what's the takeaway? You don't need to be a colonel or a culinary big shot to change the game. Just keep tossing out those little sparks of goodness, whether it's a smile, a sandwich, or a sassy comeback to life's unfair moments. Who knows? Your next kind deed might just get 200 soldiers saluting you, or at least earn you a free coffee from a grateful barista. Let's keep Ariel's vibe alive. Drop a comment to give her a virtual high five for showing the world how it's done. Share this story with your grumpy neighbor or that friend who needs a nudge to believe in humanity again. Hit like, subscribe, and smack that bell to join us at Toch Story, where we're all about celebrating the folks who make the world less cranky, one kind act at a time. Because let's face it, a little kindness goes a long way, far enough to shut down a fancy restaurant and make a kid think you're cooler than a superhero with a cookie cape.